Right, welcome everyone. It's back to Faz Lifts podcast, episode 13. Back with part 2 with Alex Schinas from Team Metal Athletics. First one went really well, so I had a good feedback, but we didn't get a chance to finish all the questions. So away we go. And before we get started, this podcast is going to be on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. And I do really want some positive reviews on iTunes especially. So please leave me some feedback there. That'd be great. Thank you. All right, Alex, welcome back. Let's go with the first question. You talked last time about clients being coachable, and I picked you up on that point because I really like that. So can we kind of revisit what you mean when you say coachable?
Yeah. Hey guys. Coachable. The most difficult thing for a coach is somebody who's kind of questioning and fighting back as for every point that you're making. So it's like, somebody's got a different idea of how things should be going. And this happens a lot of times for people that are like 5-6 weeks out and they see the competition, they think they look better or they're further ahead, or maybe we're further ahead and they're wondering if we're going to peak too early, which is an insane question that I get a lot. People wondering, hey, am I ready too early? Which, I mean, more or less doesn't exist for the vast majority of people. But the coachability comes in where you're able to shut off the stress factors that make you question everything, or even better, you just don't have that type of worry. Like some people are perfectly happy to just chug along and do their thing. And those are the people that are the easiest to bring in. But the coachability also comes in where you're addressing weak points or things to go forward, like post-show. A lot of people just self-destruct post-show. They don't have a solid grasp on their emotions or their mental state, and they tend to kind of seesaw back and forth between two wildly different ideals for a while. And it creates a very difficult position for the coach who's responding to your emotional state over and over, rather than having a solid approach, trusting that it's a sound one, and pushing forward through the period of time where hormonally you're not really stable and mentally you're coming off of a very big wave, and you need to kind of settle it down. So the most coachable people are the ones who have stability in those periods. And I think that's something people can work on too. It doesn't just happen. A lot of it's about structuring your days and your life around all of your interests and putting bodybuilding there as not just something that you're thinking about all day long, but you're executing. So that's the main thing for me, is trying to talk to people that are emotionally kind of wild. Is difficult. So there's some people that are extremely uncoachable in those regards.
Yeah, the reason that I really like that is in a different life, I actually was a secondary school teacher. So for you guys, high school, and we used to use the term teachable, whether a student is teachable or not, and it's very, very similar. And I found that in coaching as well. It's very, very similar. Than who can really trust the overall plan without questioning the minor details, which are pretty much set in stone. Obviously, you want your client's feedback, but there's a degree of take. Yeah.
So I don't mean that they shouldn't have questions, or they shouldn't have any doubt, or or input. Like, hey, I don't think this is working. And we might disagree on that, but if there's a valid feedback here, like, hey, I feel like I'm like I got a guy today that I've been working with for 4 or 5 years. He's won 3 shows. We haven't lost a show yet.
Wow.
And but he's trying to move up to the national level now. And he's kind of beaten, for 2 of those shows, he beat pretty bad competition. And on the 3rd show, he beat some pretty good competition. And now it's time to move up. And so he's a firefighter. He lives in Canada. And he's kind of hit a wall in terms of his job is very physically demanding. And the last, I'd say 6 or 8 weeks, he's run into tendonitis. And then after the tendonitis kind of subsided, we got back to training, and he's just like, I'm really lethargic and I don't feel well. And so, at that point, it's time to pull back and get blood work and kind of reevaluate. But without that feedback, some guys would just bash through that and keep going, and you know, or they'd report kind of indifferently to it.
Yeah.
And so without that, you know, that feedback, you're not coachable. You know, it's not possible to fix.
Yeah, 100% agree. I've also found that for the clients who are quite coachable, sometimes when they start to get a little bit awkward, it's usually a decent sign that something's going on in their personal lives, or they're perhaps a little bit overtrained. And that in itself is a sign to pull back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So just as a follow on from that, what are some examples of some of the worst clients you've had?
Oh God. So there's a lot of different types of bad clients. Probably the most difficult ones to deal with are the ones who cheat on their diet, persistently cheat on their diet, and think that I don't know. And they could be really, they're cheating themselves, and a lot of times they don't even really realize it, that they're cheating on their diet necessarily, or they're making admissions where they shouldn't be. I've got a guy who, he's an excellent client. I've had him for over a year, and we brought him from pretty fat to like, he's probably like 7 or 8% right now. We're like 6 weeks out. So he, about, I want to say 9.5, 10 weeks ago, or 10 weeks out, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, he'd just been stuck at 219 pounds for like 8 weeks. And his food that I had on his plan, it just didn't warrant that type of a weight. So I stopped and I said, I'm not pulling any more food. I'm not adding any more cardio. I'm not adding any more drugs. I'm not doing anything here until we address this, because you're either eating too much, or you're sneaking food off the plan, or you're not doing the activity you're telling me, because it's just doesn't line up. And so I said, well, okay, we're going to take a picture of every meal from now on. And you're going to send me a picture 6 times a day for the next 10 weeks. And wouldn't you believe that
that's great. That's great.
that in 3 weeks, we're down 6 pounds, and it's 6 really quality pounds, and he's dry and lean and looks great. And he says, yeah, you know, he still hasn't really acknowledged it, and I haven't given him a hard time about it. It just came to the point where I knew he was doing something. And the only way to really push through it was to get him to send me pictures. So this is something that happens more often than I'd like to admit, that if I make people take pictures, either 1, they start improving, or 2, they quit.
Yeah.
And the reason they quit is because they weren't fucking doing it in the first place.
Yes.
Right. So what am I supposed to do? Take more food away from the plan they're not doing anyway?
Yeah, but you don't really know what the plan is at that point, because they're not doing the plan.
There's just no point for me.
There's
continuing.
no point.
I can't fix anything at this point, and anything I put on paper is fake.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're bad people. It's not that they're not trying. It's just that they're not willing to fully commit, and that's not coachable. There's no way I can fix it. So that's one of them. Another one is people that take everybody's opinions and point of view, or seek out other opinions. Constantly. Sorry, 1 second. That's are you gonna run that first?
Well, I can set it up because I'm waiting for screens to dry.
Yeah.
And then I gotta burn the screens. So I was gonna set this up on one of the heads, and then talk about JL electric and what size she wants, and we'll print out those films.
Yeah, get that set up. I'm gonna be on this for a little bit though. Okay. Sorry about that, Faz.
No worries.
So yeah, there's the people that are, and you know what's funny is, like, there's some high level people that work with really, really high level coaches that hit me up constantly for opinions. And I'm like, I'm in this really strange position where I'm like flattered that they want to hear my opinion. And, you know, I'm thankful that I'm looked at that way, but at the same time, I can't really give it. So I'm always saying, well, what does your coach think? What does he think? Oh, you know, well, this and that. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't want to work with this person, you know, because they're going to do this to me.
Yeah, I had a similar situation recently. So there's a guy who left his previous coach, and he came to me about 3 weeks prior to his contest. And he left his previous coach kind of bitching about him and all that. And I'd known this guy for a few years off the forums. So I thought, you know, fair enough, let's take him on and see what happens. Did the competition. He did really well. He was with me for about 6 months after. Never once put anything up on social media to say I was coaching him or anything like that. I actually talked him through potentially an eating disorder. So I did a lot of good work for him. And one day, a few weeks ago, he just sends me a message saying, "Okay, I think I can go on it on my own now. So
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you." And so there was no thanks, nothing like that. And next thing I know, he's with some other coach, and he's putting it all over his Instagram saying, "I'm with these guys now," and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, holy shit, there's just no integrity. So if that guy's listening, by the way, and you can go fuck yourself. So that's just from me to him. That's one of my worst clients.
I've got two more examples, I guess, that I could give you. One is I had a guy for several years, and we went from like team to just a monster. And so we were 11 days out of the first show, and our plan was to do the first show and then go do junior USAs. And he was going to be up against Hunter Labrada at junior USAs in the super heavyweight class.
Oh, wow.
So we were doing pretty good. I had noticed for like 6 weeks before the show, we were very combative. I had his food pretty low, and he's a big guy, and I thought it was necessary. At the time, he wasn't doing a lot of cardio. He had a pretty strenuous job, but not physically strenuous, but mentally so, which can be just as taxing.
Yeah.
So the food was lower, and the training was a little lower than I'd like, but it was necessary because he would have been too stressed otherwise. So anyway, everything was going really good, I thought. And then we started kind of butting heads, and he said, this other guy that you've got is eating a lot more, and he's coming in faster and this and that. And I said, yeah, that's not really relevant.
No.
And then he, 11 days out, we had booked flights for me to go down to his show. And 11 days out, he called me up and he was like, I really appreciate everything you've done for me forever and this and that, but I've got an opportunity to work with Chris Aceto, and I'm going to take him on. And I said, okay,
yes.
well, I understand. So after the show, we'll do that. He was like, no, I'm going to do it now. And I was like, are you fucking serious? Like, let me finish out this show.
Yeah.
And he was like, I didn't say that to him, but he was like, yeah, I think it's best that I get on Chris's plan right away. And I said, okay, all right, I get it.
Well, what can you say at that point?
I really just wanted to go down to thank him, to thank him and his wife, and to see him again. And I have friends down there, and I wanted to go down and see everybody and kind of finish out full circle what we had started. And you get a chance to go work with Chris, you go work with Chris. I guess that's it's fine. So I can't really argue it. So anyway, he goes and does the show, pretty handily wins, goes on to junior USA's, gets second. But the day of the show, he hits me up and Aceto's not answering me. And I said, well, what do you mean? What do you need? He said, well, he sends me, I still have the text. He's like, sends me all these texts like that he sent to Chris. And Chris says, he's saying, I'm flattening out. I did a photo shoot 2 days ago. I've been on a dactone for like a week. I'm really flat. I feel like I need to get hydrated. What do I do? And Chris says, are you going to retan your face? Like, what's his response? And I'm like, I just start laughing. I'm like, what are you talking about? Are you going to retan your face? Like, who gives a fuck about your face?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm at this point, I'm just like, what has this guy done to Chris Aceto to get this kind of a response? And like, I can't imagine. And he's a good kid, so I can't imagine he's done anything really. So, I said, all right, listen, unsolicited, against better judgment, I'm going to give you my advice. You need to rehydrate, you need a lot of sodium in your body right now. I go, what did you carb up on? He said, well, he didn't really tell me, so I used Rice Krispie treats. And I said, what? Like, how many? He's like, 2,000 grams of carbs from Rice Krispie treats.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, what the fuck?
Over how long?
I'm like, what the fuck is going on? That you know what I mean? So this is a nightmare client to me. This is somebody that should be fucking with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm like, so then after the show ends, he fires him and goes with Andrew Vu. And then Andrew cuts his food down really low and gets him shredded. And he's coming into the show this year as a front runner for junior nationals and looks fantastic. But now he's eating less than I had him on, and he's not complaining.
Yeah.
So, he's posting up about how much he's suffering and how little he's eating. And I'm like, fuck, dude, the only reason you left me is because you were just tired of me.
Yeah.
Like, I was giving you good advice, and I would have gotten you to that exact same place.
Of course you would have. I mean, if you handled him 3 weeks up till the show, you would have got him the same placing.
Would have got him the same place. And
right.
and honestly, I go back and look at the pictures with me, and I say, you were bigger, rounder, you were better. You would have come in really tight and with a better overall look. This year he looks better, but he, he's another year older. He's also very young, so it's like he's going to progress.
Yeah.
So that to me was kind of a nightmare, where it's just the people get tired of your the way you talk to them or the way you deal with each other, or become too close as friends, and they want to beef with you more than they want to listen to you. That's one. And then the third one that I'll give you, not to harp on bad clients because it's kind of bad form, but I could go on all day.
It's fun.
We could do just an episode with this. Another guy that I picked up off GH15, and I actually found him and said, "You have tremendous potential." He was very young at the time. I said, "You've got to get on stage." And he was like, "You really think so?" And I was like, "Yeah, I really do." And he's like, "Well, I don't have any money, this and that. I can't afford a coach." And I said, "You know what? I'll fucking help you. Like, I'll get you there. You have what it takes. I want to see you do it." So long story short, I ended up coaching him for 2 years, 2 shows, 2 top 3 places, and never charged him a dime. And then after the second show, he picked up a couple jobs and he was doing better. And I said to him, I was like, it's just unfair for me to continue with you unpaid.
Sure.
To my other clients. It's just unfair to them.
Yeah.
They, I don't mind doing, helping some people out. I really don't. I've got a couple people that I've told that have had serious tragedies in their life, and I tell them that if they ever need help for any reason, they're never going to pay me. I'll help you. And I'll go to bat for that. Like, if anybody has a problem with it, I'll say, well, you can go fuck yourself because this person deserves it. But this particular case, I had done everything well and above that you would expect, and for a paid client. And when I told him that it was, there's a modest fee. My fees are not super high.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think I'm going to go in on my own for a while. I was like, cool, no problem. He's like, I'll pick you up for prep next time. I was like, no problem. So he hits me up for prep. I'm like, all right, let's get going. And then he just kind of ghosts me. And then out of nowhere, he's like, hey, I'm 3 weeks out. I think I'm going to do this show. I'm not really sure. I got to prep really fast for it. And I'm like, yeah, I think you can do it. I definitely think you can do it. And he was waiting for me to say, I'll help you. But I was like, good luck,
Yeah.
So he does the show, and then out of nowhere hires another coach. And I'm just like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
That makes no sense. Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. Everything we did was tremendous up to that point.
Yeah.
And really, he was just like, I was good enough for free, but I wasn't good enough to be paid.
Yeah, and that sucks because you've got 2 years of experience with his body. So you know him.
Inside and out.
And he's thrown that away. That makes no sense.
Inside and out. And I don't know, maybe he needed to mature to the point where he could kind of take it as seriously as he needed to get to the upper levels, because he will get there, I think. But at the time that I had him, he was just like, I can't eat enough. It's too uncomfortable. I'm going to stop, this and that, like, enjoy my summer. And so there's a little bit of a maturity thing there. And, I wasn't going to be like, no, you have to fucking eat.
Yeah, of course.
So, it was just a nightmare because I was invested, and I expect, and he had told me that I was the only one he wanted to work with, and that I had nailed everything. He was completely happy, and then just kind of ghosted me and showed up with another guy. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if people just think they're getting something else, something new from another coach, because as well as I do, the process of bodybuilding is fairly boring. It's repeatability. You do the same thing over and over and over. And a lot of times, the best check-ins are basically just carry on doing what you're doing. And I don't know, sometimes if people expect that, oh, this is a limited approach, perhaps with a different coach, we could get some bells and whistles and I might get faster progress. But a lot of times it's just not the case.
There are a million ways to peak at the end. And so somebody might do it differently, and they, you might have a good result or feel like it's interesting and you want to hear what they have to say for the rest of the year. And, there's a lot of different ways to approach drugs in the off season and stuff like that. So I could see wanting to try different approaches. So I kind of do get it, but yeah, the vast majority of bodybuilding is like insane repetition.
Absolutely. Right now, so, I would love to carry on with this, but we're going to move on to the next question.
All right.
So are there any common coaching pitfalls you try and avoid? So things in your practice, which you've seen time and time again that you try to avoid?
Yeah. I saw this question. I thought about it for a while, and now when you asked it, I'm kind of like not sure how to put it into words. I should have thought about it a little bit more. you know what? Go to the next question.
Yeah, we can come back to it. That's fine.
I'm going to think on it for a minute.
Yeah. The next question's a really good one. So, are there any common traits that you've seen or you theorize for championship bodybuilders? So, your best clients, what are some of their common traits? Because I know I could think of some for mine. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. So this is actually one of my favorite types of questions, because I'm a big fan of athletes in general in many sports. And the common trait that I see with the top end athletes, the best of the best, is the killer instinct. And I just call them killers. So like if we're talking about basketball and people are saying, "Oh, LeBron's on the level of Jordan," I just stop with the like emoji flat face, and the one with the squinty eyes. And
Yeah.
That's my face, and I go, "LeBron ain't a killer, buddy.
Yeah.
He ain't a killer. LeBron's a nice guy who builds schools for kids. Who does, who's with the same woman for 17 years, and you can't find a traffic ticket. Yeah, maybe he's a little egotistical when you talk to him after a game or whatever, but you get on the floor and he can't wait to pass the ball, and he's a deferential type of player with supreme skill sets, and so as such, he's not a killer. He doesn't want the ball in his hands at the end. He can't be the best that ever lived. The only people that are the best that ever lived are killers. And so you look at Dorian Yates, because he's an obvious example in bodybuilding. He was an absolute fucking murderer. He was an axe murderer. He went in the dungeon and literally called the dungeon, and he formed his body out of sheer will and absolute killer instinct, because he just couldn't stand the thought that anybody would outwork him, and that anyone would give him any sort of trouble. So on game day, he wouldn't show you what he had until the last minute, and then he would just burn your soul with it, and to me, the top level champions have an instinct that's absolutely killer. I know a local guy who's won the overall here at the Cutler, New England's in the Cutler, like 3 times, and he hasn't gone to the national level, or he did one national show. It didn't really turn out perfect for him. But I became friends with him over the years, and I talked to him leading up to a show that I didn't even know he was in. We were actually standing up near the stage. I didn't even know he was in it, and he was getting on to get weighed. And I said, "I didn't know you were coming to this." He goes, "If you're planning a mass murder, why would you tell him you're coming?" And I was just like, motherfucker, like, and it gave me chills. It gave me chills because he looked me straight. He won the show, and he beat good people. He beat Nate Spear. He beat Jimmy LaFontaine. He beat a lot of good, I think Charlie Arms. A lot of guys who, a couple of them gone onto pro cards, and they're top level national guys. He beat them all. But he was just quiet as can be. He's got a big fucking beard all year, and then out of nowhere he shaves down, looks like Adonis, shows up on stage, kills everybody, has nothing to say to anybody about anything. Nothing. So yeah, that's first for me. And it doesn't really just come down to structure and talent alone, although obviously that's the next tenet of bodybuilding that's really supremely important, is that you have to be put together well. But as you see at pro shows, you see guys that are maybe not structurally as perfect that take the show. I'm trying to think of recent examples, but it's like Akeem Williams in second over Sadek Milan at New York. Akeem's got a lot of muscle, yes, and he's in better condition than he's ever been, yes, but he looks like a potato next to Sadek. Sadek has what you could consider like Mr. Olympia structure if he ever puts in the work and gets the next level of size and keeps that. Like he could be, except for his pencil neck, he has like a really silly Flex Wheeler neck. I don't know if you ever noticed Flex Wheeler and had like a really tiny neck. Like
Flex Wheeler had, just very small extremities altogether, joints and everything.
Yeah, Sadek has that too. You kind of look at him and go, "What the fuck is that?"
Yeah.
Like it kind of looks like he doesn't train. That's kind of, you know what I mean? Yeah,
just has these big bulging muscles, and then it matched to a very small frame.
Guys, you kind of wonder how hard they're training, because of things like that. But maybe his wrists are tiny, his knees are tiny. Maybe he's just a small guy who's put on a lot of muscle.
Probably.
But you look at a guy like Sadek, and you're like, structurally, he's near perfect. Maybe he could have a little smaller waist, and he'd be like killer. I look at a guy like what's his name that just won the classic class? Keon, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So like Keon's like Dexter Jackson when he's a kid. And evidently he's natural or close to it. So like you take somebody like that and give him 5 years of like bodybuilding experience and size, he could beat a lot of people. He could beat, almost anybody really. I mean, he could be the best in the world in 5 years. But the difference is he going to, plan a mass murder? You know what I mean? Is he going to do that thing? And to me, I sent Chainsaw a message this morning and I was like, hey, you're fat. You suck. Nobody has you winning. Nobody is giving you any sort of credit for anything. And, you can get 17th place and nobody will even notice. I was like, so you better fucking start training, and it was mostly because, he's absolutely like driven by stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's starting to build his own training crew and people that he's got under him. And I notice a lot of the times they're doing group training sessions with like 4 or 5 people. And more or less what I was telling him is it's time to knock that shit off and get back to the 2 a.m. stuff that you were doing. Yeah. Because there's only one way you're going to reach your potential, and that's when you're in your own head with fire and not chatting it up with the boys. And so to me, it's, I was never really that guy personally. Like I admire it and I know it's necessary to get there, but I was never, I guess maybe I was until I got hurt when I was like 23. I was pretty much like completely obsessed at that point. And thank God I did get hurt and didn't end up being just a bodybuilder, because, my life became much more enriched afterwards. But if you are going to be in the sport to be a champion, you've really got to be a killer. And so that's my number one.
My old coach was my old powerlifting coach was Tom Martin. He's a very famous powerlifter worldwide now, but he's also England's best powerlifter currently. But he always used to say to me that you don't go into a competition just to win. You go into a competition to embarrass everyone else that turns up against you. And like when you enter into that room, everyone should just be like, "Fuck." And
if I was a powerlifter at that level, my goal would be to make everybody quit.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what you used to tell me every single time.
My goal is that they don't want to lift anymore. They're just fucking done with it.
Exactly. And a lot of people felt like that about him when they went up against him. People who listen to my podcast from England will know who he is, and he's just ridiculously strong. Yeah.
Well, also, I'd want to be squatting with blood coming out of my eyeballs and people looking at me saying, I'm not doing that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a world-class powerlifter, but if I was, that would be my mentality. It would be like, how do I make everybody scared of what they just saw?
The sign of a great powerlifter for me is coming back from career-ending injuries. He's had 3 so far, and he's come back from them all stronger. He's just a tremendous. He's just the willpower is insane. I've told this story many times before, but he told me once that for the clients that he gets, he wishes that he could put them through the pain that he feels on a daily basis. Not for any sadistic reason, but just simply to say, this amount of pain for these results, is that worth it to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I was talking to Justin Randall like 2 or 3 years ago. And, at times in his preps, he was like literally sitting in his basement staring at the wall because he was just in tremendous starvation mode and pain. And you could see it on his face when you talk to him. Like he had no happiness gene at that point. It was just like, it was so matter of fact. Everything was so matter of fact when he would tell you things. Like the passion flew through him, but like you could see the passion, but it was also like you could see the pain on his face. And he said to me, like he was training some people, and he said to me, they don't want to hit this level of pain. And he said one line he tells his client when they're like, do this for 5 days and get back to me, and they're looking at it going, I don't know. And he says, I wouldn't make you do anything I wouldn't do to myself. Yeah. And I'm thinking, nobody's going to go there, man. It's just too much for most people.
It is too much. I mean, I went there for a while and I got my best lifts under Tom, but it wasn't sustainable with a full-time job, family life. It just isn't sustainable. So I feel like I've experienced it, but it wasn't sustainable for me. And I tip my hat to anyone who can. Yeah, I tip my hat to anyone who can. It's rough. Right. So we will.
Go ahead.
We'll move on to the next one. because I do love that question. I think we could ramble about it for a while, but we've got a few to get through. So next one is who are some examples of your favorite athletes? So across any sport.
Yeah, I kind of touched on that with the last one, but Michael Jordan's the most obvious example for me. Not just because of his abilities, but because like he was a horrible person. Michael Jordan's a terrible person. He's a problem gambler who most likely got his father killed through gambling debts, and has, by all reports, treated people poorly for basically his entire life. And so Michael Jordan, when he gets on the floor, treats everybody equally as bad at that point. And to me, Larry Bird is another one. Larry Bird's probably not anywhere near as bad a guy, but when he got on the floor, he was just going to trash you. And to me, sports at the highest level is about domination. And I love the idea of being so on fire that you can tell your opponent exactly what you're going to do and then execute.
Yeah.
To say to somebody, you can't guard me. I'm going to come off the shoulder. I'm going to take 2 dribbles to the left, head fake you. You're going to go for it. And then I'm going to shoot the shot from here.
Yeah.
And then do it. And then his opponents will come out and say, afterwards, he told me everything he was going to do, and he still dropped 48 points on me. Like there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
To me, that's the pinnacle of sports. Like just, you can't stop me. Tom Brady, probably really obvious because of where I'm from, but being that he was like a low-level draft pick, 5th or 6th round, and walked in the building, and Robert Kraft, the owner, saw him, and he said, "Hey, who are you?" Like, introduced himself, said, "Hey, I'm Tom Brady. I'm your new quarterback. I'm the best choice you've ever made." Or he said, "I'm the best choice this administration will ever make." And, Robert Kraft told that story afterwards, and as it turns out, was absolutely true. Guy couldn't run, looked like a sack of shit. Didn't have much of an arm, like didn't have a John Elway arm, didn't have a Dan Marino arm. The skill set was not, he was not the Sadik of bodybuilding or the Flex Wheeler of bodybuilding. The skill set wasn't really there. So he did it through determination and learning and playbook and really iron nerves. In the heat of pressure, I can't tell you how many times he was about to get murdered, and he just stood there to the last second and delivered the football. I mean, and then just took a hit, just absorbed it. Across pretty much all sports, I used to love watching Pete Sampras.
Yeah, big fan.
Huge fan of Pete Sampras. He just wore people down and made them make mistakes, and he never did. And it was great for a very long time. Federer is probably the same, but I haven't watched tennis quite as much. It's not as fun as it used to be. Tiger Woods in his prime, guys like that, where they're just like Tiger Woods, probably not a very good guy.
Yeah, I think we can safely say that by now.
We've established that. I think we've established that.
Yeah, we have.
And he melted after everyone figured it out. He absolutely fell apart as a human being, and it took him his reconstruction to get back to where he is. I can't even imagine emotionally how hard that was to do. But previous to that, his level of domination, I think there's a direct correlation sometimes to how poorly you can treat other people and how far you can go in life. And I'm not saying that people should be that way, but when I'm watching sports or when I'm watching somebody dominate other people and admiring it, you have to understand that that's a huge element of it.
Yeah, it is. And I'm really glad you said that about sports and winning, because right from the beginning for me, like powerlifting, when I was 18, I did my first competition when I was 18. It was never about just participating. It was always about winning. So I'm glad. I hate it when people say that, like, yeah, well, let's just send us take part and it'll be fun. I had fun at that federation. I had fun at that meet. My goal was always to compete against the best. And whether I got beat or not, that was until to compete against the best. It annoys me when people compete in soft federations because they just want to have a good time with their friends. It's like, no, do you really want to look back at your life and go, I had some good time in that sport that I spent so much time on? Or would you want to look back at your life and think, well, I competed at the best and I got better because of doing that?
Yeah. The only place that I have that level of competition now, like personally is in poker. And I can tell you, I'm a pretty empathetic person overall. Like it's probably why I'm not as good as I should have been at some of the sports. I obviously I'm 5'3", 5'4", so I was never going to be a top flight basketball player, even though I love basketball. But when I play poker, I pretty much want to break you, and it's super fun for me to do so. And my feeling is like, if you don't have the money to be at the table, you shouldn't be there. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
But it's a psychological warfare, and that's where I'm probably closest to the ideals of those people that I like, in that element. As soon as the game's over, I'm not like that, but that's probably the only place that I'm able to exhibit it.
Yeah. I think that's a great topic. So we'll move on to the next one. A bit of a change of pace here. So how do you feel about social media and bodybuilding? It's changed a huge amount over the last 15 years. What are your thoughts on that?
I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I think that there's information that's accessible to people that wasn't when I was young. And I think that it's a huge benefit to young bodybuilders that they can get much further along much earlier than they would have necessarily when I was young. I didn't even have anybody that would tell me anything. Like, it was, they'd lie to me. So, you'd ask a question and then you're like trying to figure out, okay, was that the real answer or the not real answer? So, nowadays it's like you could ask a question and get 17 answers.
Oh yeah.
And you can figure out which ones you want to listen to, but at least you're getting 17 answers, and those are probably within there. There's a lot of truth and a lot of expert opinion. On the other hand, I think it's created a dystopia, or some sort of like dystopian image in people's minds about, maybe dystopia is the wrong word, but like a distorted image of what is real. And it's never evidenced more than when you see people stand up next to each other on stage, who on social media you couldn't figure out who was better, but then on stage it's not even close.
Yeah.
So you get these people that, like, I'll be getting inbox pictures of these people, like, somebody's going to go up against this guy. How am I going to beat this guy? How am I going to beat this guy? And I'm like, you're going to stand next to him and you're going to make him look small. You're going to make him look bad. I can already see it. Like, I know what I'm looking at when I look at you. I don't know what this guy is. Like, this is a social media angle. This is a picture that he took just for this purpose. I don't know what's real. So that's part of it. And people get really, really hyped up over how someone looks in a picture online that's been edited.
Well, I'll tell you an example of that. Do you remember Vic Richards, the
Yes.
black bodybuilder? He never really competed that often. He had almost a mythical reputation in the magazines, and you'd see him in these pictures in the magazines. I know it's not social media, but he was basically away from the stage, just on his own. He looked amazing. People would talk him up. But I saw footage of him recently on stage against Dorian, and Dorian made him look like a child.
Was that the FIBO?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
so that was one of the few times he stood next to Dorian, and Dorian wasn't even really he wasn't really close to his prime shape there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that too. Yeah, it's very easy to make people feel like you're really good if you never have to stand up there. Victor Richards was interesting. He was always saying that he wouldn't compete because it was like against his religion. Then he would show up and compete somewhere. It's like very strange.
What was his religion? I didn't know that.
I don't even know. I just remember him reading. It wasn't, maybe not religion, or against his beliefs or something.
Right. Okay.
Like he didn't want to compete against other people or something. And really, what it meant was he didn't want to lose.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
he didn't stand a chance against Dorian. I mean, Dorian was just too big, too wide, too large.
You know what sucks is if you're that good that like people are comparing you to the Mr. Olympia, but you're not, like, you haven't had a chance to beat everybody else.
Yeah.
So like what's Victor Richards supposed to do? Like everybody wants to see him against Dorian. So like now you got to go beat Mr. Olympia, or who cares? Like, that sucks.
But on the flip side, had he actually just knuckled down and started competing against Dorian from the beginning, perhaps that would have spurred him on to be better.
Who knows? Like,
Who knows?
I'm of the opinion that if you were competing more often, you're going to get better.
Yeah.
So I think he would have been right there, but you know, it's hard to say. I never even saw a picture of him from behind.
That's
like
true.
I don't think I've ever seen one from behind. He could have looked like a glazed donut for all we know.
Yeah, true.
You know, but yeah, I mean, social media. I'm not a huge fan anymore. I was for a while. I was pretty entrenched in it, and I still use it way too much. Like, it's necessary for all of the things I'm doing, for all the businesses I'm doing. It's necessary to create a presence and keep one. But I'm not a fan of the mentality that it creates, and the millennial generation seems to be less resilient emotionally than a lot of others. Actually, the youngest people coming in now are actually much tougher, but I would say the 23 to 33 range are extremely soft people, and then the social media just makes it harder for them to harden up and, like, you know, get there in life.
I tell you what I've seen as well is just coming from the British angle, because I follow a lot of UK coaches, a lot of them follow me. There's a massive lack of originality in terms of UK bodybuilding. No offense to Trained by JP or Muscle Mentors, but every UK coach that I know is dick riding Trained by JP and Muscle Mentors. Like, if you're not a clone of those two, then are you even a UK coach at this point? Like, everyone is just ridiculous. Like, have some fucking originality.
I'm not as sensitive to it as I used to be, and I don't watch it as closely. So I did watch some JP stuff, and I don't know. He's obviously put on a tremendous amount of muscle. But the way he trains, I'm just looking at it and saying, you know, most people are going to get hurt doing this.
Yeah.
Or more people are going to get hurt doing this than should.
I agree. I mean, I think that's a different topic, but I certainly, while I like JP because he's brought together a lot of British bodybuilding. It's just the clones. Like, they're everywhere. Every UK coach sets himself up with a similar system. Everybody's doing the Trained by JP. Everybody's doing this. Everybody's doing Romanian deadlifts with a band around their waist. It's just, for God's sake, it's just, you see the same shit over and over. No one seems to have their own ideas.
Well, at least he's original.
Yes, exactly. So no offense to him at all, but it's just everyone else. Right, we'll move on to the next one then. So a bit of a different thing. When should you compete? And it says here, when should you not?
Well, when should you not is probably more important. And you should not compete if you've had a number of health issues in a row that you're coming off of, and you were, like, let's say you were, I'm going to compete next fall, and then you go through the winter the year before and you have a small injury that sets you back 6 weeks, and then you have another one, or you get an infection and you end up on antibiotics, and then you have to kind of clean out after that because you've been on gear too long. And then you're coming back into the season and you haven't had significant time to make improvements because you've been sidelined. That's a good time to take time and push it back a little further. So if you're not making improvements, there's really no point in showing up again.
Yeah, I agree.
So I see that a lot, actually, because there's a fine line with, you know, especially if you've competed like 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row. You know, your body might be better off taking a whole year and a half, whole 2 years before you're back on stage, and your body's going to tell you. So that's number one. If you've had some injuries, you've had some sickness, and you haven't really had.
Hello. Oh, I think I've lost you, Alex. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Oh, what did you miss? Where did you last?
Literally the last 2 or 3 seconds.
Oh, okay.
You were just summarizing when you shouldn't. That's all.
Yeah. So school would be another, like, people that finish up school and take, you know, a semester or two, and they're, you know, they're pushing hard for school, and they haven't had a chance to really be in the gym and be on their meals, and that's a good time to push it back too. Another thing is you have to really know why you're competing. There's going to be a goal in mind that's pretty solid, like, clear. Whether it be, I'm going to win this particular competition, I'm going to qualify for this and do this show the next year. Doesn't mean you're going to reach the goal. It just means that you know what the goal is. And so if you haven't got that goal in mind, starting to prep for a show is probably too early. You probably just need to diet and see what's going on before you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when should you compete? Yeah. I think everybody should compete if they feel like they want to compete. I think and what that means is you should be prepared to put everything you have into competing. And when the moment that is that you say, I'm willing to do whatever is necessary to get in the best shape and win the show, then I think you should do it, regardless of what anybody else thinks. You might not be ready, but you're going to learn something pretty serious by getting on stage, and you're not going to know what you're made of until you do. And it might be just the driver that you need in terms of structure, rigidity, dedication, finishing out a job, doing something extremely difficult you've never done before. All of those have value. And I think that if you're ready to pursue that and you're ready to take that on, that you should. Now, if you get up there and you look like, pretty bad, or the competition's much better, structurally you're terrible, or whatever the reason is, or maybe you get up there and you just fucking hate it, don't do it again. That's fine. Not a problem. That first time you compete, it's not like, you have to go become nationally qualified and be ready to be at nationals. It's, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Some people obviously have the goods to do it, and every year they're like not sure if they're going to do it, and they never do. So I think for a lot of those people, it's just like they're not prepared to put the effort in. And then they get people that are like, oh, I want to compete. Here's the money, and I'm ready to go. Here's the plan. Let's go. And then 3 or 4 weeks into it, they're like, I don't really know. Like, can I do this? Can I get away with that? Can I, there's a trip over here. Can I do this? Can I do that? And really, like, if you're going to prep for a show, you don't even have to tell me if you're going on a trip, because you're just going to do the fucking plan.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're leaving, going anywhere. It makes no difference. Like, oh, I'm going to be going with my buddies over here. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't really care. Like,
yeah. It's one of the frustrating things about working with some clients where, they're not the killer instinct clients that we've talked about previously. They are just gen prop clients, but then they'll want to go away for a holiday. And it's like, in that stage, look, they've got their priorities. You can't really argue with that, but you'd prefer if they stuck to the plan, but they're not going to. It can be frustrating, but it's their goals, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's their goals. So, you should compete whenever you feel like you're ready. But to me, you should be prepared to do the work. That's basically it.
100%. Yeah. Right. So just switching gears a little bit to the next question. We had some coming in from the forums. This one was just simply crazy drug regimens that you've seen over the years. We kind of briefly talked about it on the last show, but what are some of the more outlandish ones you've seen?
I think we were talking about pros, like
pros, Kai Green.
I had a guy that you could probably file under one of the worst clients too. He was on GH15. He was actually like,
I think I know who you mean already. I think you've mentioned him before. Carry on.
Oh, I'm not sure if I have, but you might know this guy once I don't remember what his name was on there. It was like all caps too. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But this dude, everything I told him to take, he took way more.
Yes.
And I started out at like a decent amount of drugs, and he was like, no, way more. First he was like, I want to hit 300 in the off season. I want to be 300 pounds. Yeah. And we started at like 230 pounds. And I was like, yeah, but he was like untrained at that point. Like he was trained, but he had been not training for a while.
Yeah.
And he was, pretty lean. So tall guy.
Was he the guy with the dodgy pec?
Yes.
Yeah, I do know. I do remember.
So like, the only thing he really cared about was getting to 300, and I didn't care at all about it. I think we got to like 303, and
wow.
But really, like past 280, I would have been fine turning it around, and he was just like, no. so after we got to 300, he says, well, you told me to take 10 IUs of Slin with your meals, and I was taking 20 and just eating extra. And by the way, I put Lantus on top, and you told me to take 6 IUs of GH, but I took 18. And I was like, okay.
What do you even do with that? What
nothing.
possible response could you have to that?
So it turned out that he was doing. I told him to take 1,200 milligrams of test, and he was doing 2,500.
Oh wow! Holy shit!
And so I kind of knew it, so I was kind of like trying to tell him the lower end of things.
Yeah.
Like I knew he was going to push it, but I thought he would like add 30%.
But he was just doubling it.
I thought he would be like, oh, he said 1,200, I'll do 1,700. Oh, he said 6 IU, I'll do 10 IU. Like something like that is what I thought he would do. But he was like, no, I'll just fucking blow it up 300%. Why not? So he just, and I don't even know what he was doing for trend, because he was like, out of nowhere, he'd be like, hey, I found parabolin. I'm like, okay. So he just added that on top. I
seem to remember he was on like maybe 1.5 grams of that as well.
He was just doing everything. And so at the end of it, he wanted to do Lavrone's 200 milligrams of Vanadrol. And I was like, I don't know if Lavrone really did that. And he was like, well, I want to try it. And I was like, I don't even know how to tell this guy no at this point. I'm just like, I don't really think you need any orals at all at this, with what you're using. So at the end of it, he was 2,500 milligrams of test, 1.5 grams of tren or parabolin or whatever the fuck, I don't even know. He had 1 gram of Deca that he told me, I told him not to run Deca at that point, and he just kept running it. 18 IU of GH, 200 milligrams of Anadrol. D-ball, when he found it, like he was like, oh, I got some D-ball. I threw it in there. Basically just anything he could find, he just put in. So he was probably close to like 8 or 9 grams when he was done, with a lot of insulin and a lot of food. And I do mean a lot of food. Like that's how you kill yourself. You do that long enough, that's how you do it. Not acutely, but
So end result for him? Oh, how did he look with all this gear?
End result was we dieted down. I'd have to look at what he weighed when we dieted him down, but he was like in the 240 range, 250 range.
Wow.
And very, very, very lean, very sharp. But he got slaughtered on stage because his posing was terrible, and he had the torn pec, and and he was I think he was like 3rd out of 5 or something like that.
He was a tall guy as well, I remember.
He's like 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah, he was very limmy though, He's very limmy.
But the other part of it was that he was also like, he'd send check-in pics from like 6 different locations. I think this dude had some money. I don't know where he got the money from.
I know what he used to do. I know it makes sense because he had easy access. Well, without saying too much, he had.
Oh, okay.
Let's just say he had easy access to that stuff. So yeah, let's just leave it.
I didn't know if that was his gig. That makes sense, because he would be like, one check-in picture would be like standing in front of the crib with his daughter in the crib.
Right.
Like here's my front double bicep with my daughter, like age 1, standing behind me.
Just weirdly, yeah.
And then the next one is like front double bicep in a hotel with like a hooker in the back. Like literally. And I'm like, who's that? He's like, that's a hooker. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, you didn't tell her to clear out before you took pictures? He's like, no, whatever. So, but it was like, 1 week at home, 1 week out on the road with hookers. And he would just talk about him like, yeah, I was fucking a hooker. And that's that. And I'm like, okay. So brilliant. Basically he was just, I would be shocked if he wasn't doing rec drugs on top of it.
Yeah. I
would be shocked if basically every thrill-seeking activity wasn't part of his regimen. So those types of people, like, I think that risk aversion is not a great trait for bodybuilding in general. Like, you need to be risk tolerant to a degree. I'm a pretty risk tolerant person. Like, I've had some pretty good experiences, but there's a level that's like, you see it like Craig Goliath, that dude in Las Vegas. Yeah. What's that guy in New York? Bo Basin. Mm-hmm. Like 2 kidney transplants and just can't stand to be small, can't stand to live small. There's a level of risk aversion that's like extreme in bodybuilding where those guys they're going to die, Yeah. And they're going to die from lots of different reasons, but the drugs are one of them. And so that's one of them. There's been a few people like that where they just, I've run into people that are like not very good bodybuilders at all, who are like, hey, what do you have, Brian on? What do you have Chainsaw on? What do you have these guys on? And when I tell them, because I will tell them like pretty much honestly, they're like, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whatever you're doing, buddy, you don't need that much. Trust me. And I've never gotten through to anybody that way. I've never actually made a dent.
There is definitely a thing to be said for just becoming a better bodybuilder. I mean, I've purposely spent 2 years in between competitions just because it's my first official off season, and I just need to get to grips with what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's just a case that you can just try and be a better bodybuilder. It's not just all about pumping in more drugs.
Yeah. No, I mean they're obviously they work and they exist and they're going to be used and they you should use them if you're going to be a top level bodybuilder. But there's no amount of drugs that's going to make you elite if you're not elite.
Yeah.
So you can try, go for it, but you're gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, if you see some of the elite guys as well, like I don't know.
I think a lot of people have come to the realization now, which is why the classic class is thriving, which is why men's physique is like, if you look at men's physique guys, those guys are on gear, lots of gear.
Oh yeah.
And like that, the look of those guys are pretty big now, as opposed to 5 or 6 years ago when you could get away with like bikini girl cycles basically.
Yeah.
But the drugs are prevalent in every division, even bikini.
I mean, the craziest thing is when you see a guy who actually does have a lot of talent and natural. I mean, I don't know if you see one of Chester's clients recently. He's 240 with abs, and he's not touched anything yet. He pretty much looks like Ronnie did before Ronnie started taking anything.
Yeah.
So, it's just insane. It's just like people are just like, I'll just give up now.
I saw this dude a couple weeks ago. We went to his gym. He opened a gym in Lowell. So if you guys want to look him up on Instagram, it's th3_professor. Mm-hmm. You'll find him. And he walked out, and it's like a Latin community. So I walk in the gym, and all these dudes are like shirt off, walking around looking like Adonis. And this dude stands up off a bench, and I'm like, oh shit, this is like potential written all over him. And my client Chris Pantano, who invited me there, he trains there. He points at him, he goes, he's fucking natural. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, go look at this guy's profile. And I'm looking at him in person, and I'm going, no, he's not. He's like, yep, WNBF pro. He's going to do classic next year. And I'm like, give me 2 years with this fucking guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Give me 2 years with this guy, and I'll give you like 212 bodybuilder pro level, no problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those guys, like, you see the guy like that, it just puts you in your place. He's better than I'll ever be, and he's natural.
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, so that's, I suppose that's one good thing about social media and bodybuilding. The popularity is certainly risen. Right, so we'll move on to the next question. A little bit more on steroids now. So PEDs and infertility, is that overblown or not? I'm
honestly not sure. I think that if you've got problems with fertility, it's definitely not helping. But I myself have had 2 children I was on heavy cycles at the time, different types of cycles. One of them was post-show. And at the time when I was post-show, I was like, I kept running gear, which I don't do anymore. But at the time I was like insane and just kept going. And so I was still on trend, although it was lower. I think I was on 350, and I was still on a gram of test and a little bit of Masteron, and I conceived my son. Couldn't tell you how, because I've been blowing blanks my whole life. But conceived my son, and then my daughter a few years later. I was on an off-season cycle and conceived her, and then so like I chalked it up to GH being kind of a healer of sorts. Mm-hmm. Myself and my wife got on GH at the same time, and she got pregnant immediately. So, and we'd been together for years and never used protection. So it was kind of like, okay, that might have done something.
I remember you saying that. Yeah, I remember you saying about going back on it being a bit of a revelation for you, the GH.
It's definitely circumstantial, but I've seen it work with several people. I've seen several people I've said, just skip the HCG, just use HGH and see what happens. And several people have gotten pregnant doing that.
Wow.
On the other hand, I've had several clients that I've helped with fertility, which is about the toughest coaching assignment you can have. Because it requires like anti-bodybuilding to a degree. Yes. And so, the mental aspect's really tough, but A couple of clients have managed to do it. One of them ended up having to use in vitro, and then a couple of others didn't, and they managed to do it without. But I think if you've got real trouble with it, that the gear could be quite detrimental. But otherwise, I haven't seen enough evidence that it's like going to prevent you from having children. I see so many people that have kids.
You know, I'd also add on top of that as well as perhaps just general health and body fat levels probably plays a role. Would you agree in that?
Probably. But I honestly, I see all sorts of people having kids that, like, I look at them and go, how? You know, I had one client. This is funny. It's funny in like a no, don't. It's not funny kind of. But he had just gotten married, and he conceived the child, and then, like, I think the child was being born in the hospital, and then he popped on his wife. By the way, I have a side chick, and she's pregnant, and we're doing like 4 months.
Oh shit!
So that whole thing unraveled after that, obviously, but it was funny, not funny, because he was on everything when he conceived both of the children. And so as a result of 2 children in a year, he's now like a puny dad bod. hasn't been training quite as much, but
he's laid off the trend.
So I just point to him and go, well, obviously not, because you can get multiple people pregnant in minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, on everything.
He's more virile than he needs to be.
More than there needs to be. It can exist, exactly. Yeah. So, not that every child. Actually, both of the children are beautiful, and I'm sure they're a blessing. But just for, you know,
of course,
general purposes, I'd advise against. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
But yeah, I think it might be overblown, but I honestly don't think anyone can tell you the answer to that succinctly. I don't think that it exists. I think some people have no problem whatsoever, and like Ronnie with his 19 kids, and then others have quite a hard time.
Yeah, I like that answer. I think it pretty much jives with what I've seen as well. Just moving on to one of the we've got 2 questions left. Hopefully we've got time to answer them. Could we have a bit of a discussion around individuality with stacks? This question actually comes from that 240-pound natural beast. He wants you to talk a little bit about how you would individualize for people, because I know you're a fan of higher test, but what sort of changes have you had to make for different people?
Well, somebody that hasn't done gear before, I don't get too fancy trying to envision a stack for them that's unique. It's pretty tough to just guess what's going to work for somebody. I guess you could do some blood work and figure out if they've got certain, like a blood disorder or what type they are, and you could probably individualize to some degree through that, what their estrogen levels look like normally. All that stuff you could kind of take that into account. But generally speaking, I do stick to test as the driver, the base. And like I've never personally put anybody on an androlone only stack. Just I've never done it, and I probably never will. I don't feel comfortable just experimenting on somebody else like that. Although I've watched some people do it with some success, I question if it's actually more successful. And in the end, I tend to say, you know, did they get the biggest they were going to get that way? And I usually think no. So if there's another reason for them to do it, then all for it. But individuality comes down to like their tolerances for different drugs and how they respond. So usually I'm going to start with tests, and I'm going to probably use Masteron if they've got some estrogen issues before I get into AIs. And usually I'm going to try like Anavar with people and see what happens. Like see if it, like I take Anavar right now and I gain 4 pounds and I look like a beast because I've been off everything for so long. So it's like I was telling somebody a couple weeks ago, I opened up looking for another bottle of test to do my TRT, and Anavar fell out. That was an open bag, and I was like, fuck it. Start eating these until the bag's gone, and I put on 4 pounds in a week and started to look like a bodybuilder again. And I'm like, damn, like it's actually a better drug than I remember.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't remember you saying much about VAR. Yeah.
Yeah, it's refreshing because when I was on a lot of stuff, I take Anavar, I wouldn't even notice.
Mm-hmm.
But, like if you're a beginning bodybuilder, beginning to gear, it might be a perfect drug. So I might start with, I generally would just start with the mildest stuff you can do. And, test isn't the super mildest, but in a lower dose, it's okay. And a little bit of test in Anavar and see how you respond to it. And then, like as most things go, you progress and try new things. But I think it gets to be a little bit too much experimentation just to try to find the perfect drug, and it's not going to work that way. Like you're not going to find like T-ball works better than Anavar or something like that. Like there's probably no reason to ever take Turinabol. But people do because they want to try different stuff, or there's really, like, to me, all of the trend derivatives, all the methyl trends and the oral trends and all that stuff, like, really have no place in bodybuilding as far as I'm concerned. Maybe like injectable Superdrol or something, but even that I don't think it's a necessary drug. I question whether it's really going to give you an edge at all. And it certainly has downsides. So,
I think people, particularly on the internet, where everyone seems to hyper focus on specifics, there seems to be a tendency to sort of consider that each drug has its own, various uses, particularly in the off season. And I think it's more a case of just finding what works for you, what's tolerable, and what lets you take a high dose that you need.
Well, but let's first, like, let's assume first that you're covering all the bases with nutrition and training.
Right, exactly.
Because if you're not, and you're just trying to find a drug that you tolerate better, you're cheating yourself. There's no point. You're not really going to get anywhere. You might look pretty good, and you might be happy with it, but as far as I'm concerned, it's like you're not really pushing your potential. And drug experimentation just for the sake of experimentation doesn't really interest me. I'm trying to get a certain result. Like, I'm trying to go somewhere with it. So to me, it's like you want to get hyper focused on the stuff that's really bodybuilding, and then you start to figure out drug wise. I'm not saying you need to use the least amount of drugs out of everybody you know. I'm just saying that you need to use the least amount of drugs that's effective to get to where you want to go, and gives you the opportunity to add things later, so you're not just using them as crutches.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the flip side of that, you've got somebody who's, and I've seen a few of these guys around sort of my local area, they don't really have the other factors nailed down. So they're generally walking around a little bit overweight, diet's not particularly great, and they're using exotics, things like Tren and Halo to kind of look better. And they look slightly better, but you're putting that much strain on a body that's already stressed. That just doesn't seem to way to go.
I don't think that there's any high-level bodybuilders that are really excellent that also romanticize drugs.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a population of bodybuilders who are very romanticized by drugs. They're like, they love drugs. They love what they do to them. They talk about them like they're girls. Like it's the hottest chick you've ever heard of. Oh my God, how I feel on this, And I'm like, I guess there was a period of time, like I took Hemogenin, the original Anadrol that were in the orange blister packs when I was like 21, 22, when I first started using gear. I remember I couldn't find anything. So this dude came over and he had a bottle of Lorobolin, which had a big horse on it. It was like a 50cc bottle of Lorobolin. He was like, I got this and I got Hemogenin. And I was like, yeah, all right, give me both. So Lorobolin is basically like, kind of like Deca. So I guess I have run a Deca on recycle. So I ran Lorobolin, 50 milligrams a day. I took a shot a day for 50 days. And I took one Anadrol 50 tab a day. And I lasted about a week before my fucking prostate hurt. It was so strong that I could feel it in my asshole. It was like, oh my God. But I was beast mode, like, fuck, this stuff's insane, because it was obviously a much stronger drug than I needed at the time. But, so like that was probably the only time that I took a drug that I was like, fuck, that's crazy. And I never took it again. Like I never really used Anadrol again. Like once I got better as a bodybuilder, I'd use Anadrol and I'd feel like I was too puffy on it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, I don't really care. Like, I don't really need it. So I took it out, and I don't really put it in a lot of people's plans. In fact, I've had people, like, I haven't put Chris Chainsaw and Anadrol in years. Like, I don't think I've ever used it on him. And because there's just no need for it. There's nowhere that if he ever got so flat that he needed it, I'd use it, but it just hasn't happened. So, cosmetic drug really, but most of the people are not lean enough to use it. So they just look like puffballs.
Yeah. I think to kind of round that out, it goes back to your point about common traits that champion athletes have, and it's a single-mindedness. Like, experimentation for the sake of experimentation just isn't in a champion's mindset. It's like, this is what works. Let's get it done. That's the end goal. I much prefer working with people like that. So we got one last question. This is from one of my clients. How much does shape, structure versus overall mass mean when it comes to winning competitions?
Well,
he's just to frame it, he's a little bit on the shorter side. Structurally, he's actually pretty decent, but he's a little bit on the smaller side, and he hasn't quite got the mass yet.
Yeah. Well, so am I. I'm on the short side. And I was aesthetically pretty good for a while, and then I became kind of a bigger small guy for a while. I guess if you look at like results that you see in bodybuilding more often, you see like you see the structurally sound guy beating the other guys as long as they're decently big. Like Sean Roden's going to beat Rolly Winkler as long as Sean Roden is in shape and decently big. Like, he's not flat, he doesn't look narrow, he's full and looks round. But he'll beat Rolly, even though Rolly was at his career best at the Olympia and looked absolutely insane.
He did, yeah.
Looked crazy. Like, nobody would have had a problem with him winning, to be honest.
He looked fantastic.
But you pick Roden because structurally he's just the best bodybuilder there was. So I think that if you're going to put like Bonac next to somebody like Curry, if they're both in shape, you have to pick Curry. Because he's got the shape. If Bonac, he can't fit another ounce of muscle on him and look good. So if Curry were not as big as he was, then Bonac would win because he's more developed. So, you have to be fully developed in order to win, but you don't have to be the biggest guy by any stretch. Like, Dorian would have lost to Flex if Flex ever came in right. Like, he would have lost. Here comes my wife. She's going to interrupt us. I'm still on this. What
part of it?
Yeah. What am I part of? Am I part of it, Faz? Yeah, I'm the guest.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're gonna need to edit some stuff.
It's the last question.
Okay, last question. What? Oh, this was the last question.
Yeah. This was yeah.
I thought we had this one, which was the common coaching pitfalls. I'll have to think on that one more.
Oh yeah, of course we did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, maybe we'll do another one in a couple months or something.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds fine. Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically it. Like, I think if you're structurally sound, you're going to beat pretty much everybody, just based on that, as long as you've got enough muscle for the class you're in. Like, if you're just squeaking into a light heavyweight class, but you really should be in middleweight, and you're kind of too tall for middleweight, you're kind of too small for light heavyweight, you might have an issue. Yeah. But as long as you're kind of maxing out the class you're in as far as weight, then the structurally sound guy is going to win. And once you get to the pro ranks, it's like, going back to Sadek, he probably will win that show next year, in my opinion, because John De La Rosa again will not be in shape, and he'll come in and be in shape, and maybe with another 5 or 10 pounds, he'll have what it takes to win, because he's right now he's just a little undersized. So you do have to have the requisite mass. Dexter's the obvious best example, because he's had like a 75-year career with almost the same physique for most of it. And
I think he's put on maybe 10. I want to say 5 or 10 pounds in about 12 years. So pretty much exactly the same.
It seems like it's about that. And notwithstanding the biceps injections, which at times get silly, you can go back and find some pictures of him from like the last 6 or 7 years where he's got so much oil in his arms that it's like, okay, that's enough. But other than that, like structurally, he's quite close to unbeatable, especially when his stomach used to be super tight. That he was like, you know, the only guys that were going to beat him was like Marcus Roll if he was way on, or, you know, the best of the best at that point, like the Ronnies and those guys. But, you know, anybody else, he's going to dust off. So if you see the circuit, if he went and did circuit shows that weren't the Olympia or Arnold, he was going to win any one of them at anytime he wanted. So, yeah, structure matters quite a bit.
Definitely. My answer to him was sort of, you can't really do a great deal about structure. So just put on as much mass as you can. In the amateur ranks, that does count for a lot. One final quickfire question. Your favorite bodybuilder from which year? So your favorite bodybuilder's favorite look. Like for me, it's a toss-up between Cutler 2009 to Coleman 2003. What about you?
So you're saying that you like 2003?
2003 Ronnie or 2009 Jay. So a bodybuilder and a year you thought he was the best.
Oh, God. Those are both really amazing physiques.
Yes.
And I honestly don't prefer either. I'm gonna be honest. Like if, yes, you can leave it. I feel like my favorite physiques. Let me think about what my favorite physiques ever. Phil Heath at the 1 year at the Ironman where he showed up and won that show, and then he became the Olympia 2 years later. I think his second Olympia win. I don't know what year it was.
Early on he was crazy.
Yeah, and I still don't really love his front lat spread, and he was still kind of narrow and kind of looked weird in some poses. But overall, that sort of structural perfection on stage is insane. That was one of my favorite looks. But also the condition. Like his condition was so extreme. You know, the fullness of the condition is so extreme; it was unmatched.
Yeah.
Kai Green at that one. There are a couple shows, but like one of the British Grand Prix or like Arnold's or something in Europe was just so super striated and crazy. Earlier Kai Green, like not the first year when he Colorado Pro and New York Pro, not that year, but like a couple of years after that when he put on a lot of size, but he was still really, really ripped, was so unique. He was creating muscle groups like nobody had ever had.
Yeah.
You're looking at him going, I don't know what that muscle is. Nobody has that. Why is his lower back peak? Like, why is there roundness and striations on like near his ass on his back?
Yeah.
So like stuff like that, he was completely unique. If I go back further, like I always loved Dorian, but to me in that era, like Kevin Levrone had the best physique of that era to me, but he never peaked, never ever, not once. And he also was like lacking from behind. So it was like from the front and side, Kevin Levrone was like the dude you wanted to look like.
Yeah.
It was just like, if I could walk on the beach looking like anybody, it would be Kevin Levrone.
Yeah, especially front top. Like legs, you could maybe argue about his legs.
Yeah, sure. But like, if you see a dude walking down the street, like, I would just take that physique over anyone.
Yeah.
You know, like I never really loved Flex. I know Flex Wheeler has a crazy physique, but I never really loved how he'd come into shows. Like I always thought he was like, he would just look like he didn't train as hard. He had like less density to him. So
he did. Yeah, I agree.
And Chris Cormier never hit his peak really either. He was always like 80% pretty much.
I was a huge fan of Cormier's. Just his symmetry was amazing. Every body part seemed to be well defined. You know, he just like God did a good job on him. Do you know what I mean?
I was too until he didn't send me the DVD I paid for like 6 months.
Right.
I kept emailing him being like, "Where's my DVD, man? I want to watch it." Oh, I'll give it to you. And never
fuck that guy then.
Yeah, fucking listen, Chris. I want my DVD. But yeah, like those guys, I always liked the structurally sound guys better than I liked just the mass. Like I know that a lot of people prefer just the size and the brute like look of it. But I would take like Dennis Wolf over Rule. I just thought he had a better physique top to bottom, and he had enough size to be like, holy shit, you know, that's a lot of size. And I'm having a hard time. Like Jay I was a huge fan of, but it was never because of just his physique. And I'm having a hard time picking like my favorite bodybuilder ever. I guess it's Phil Heath.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's the least beatable guy. Like, I think Ronnie was the most dominant, but I think Phil Heath at his peak, and I'm going to get shit for this, I think he would have beat Ronnie. I think if he took the 99 Ronnie against the whatever 2011 or whatever it was Heath, I think 2011 Heath would expose him in some areas.
I think you'll definitely get some shit for that.
I will.
I think with 2000, for me, with 2009 Jay, for example, he ended up getting some good competition there. Like Branch looked great that year, and there were a couple of other good guys. But the thing is, it's kind of like what we talked about earlier. When you put Jay next to anybody in the lineup, like Dexter or Branch, he's just too big, too muscular. It's just, you can't beat him.
Agreed. So, yeah, no, 100%. I agree. That was the pinnacle of Jay. Other than like the 2002 and 3 years.
Yeah, he looked good in 2002.
2003 when he did the Ironman, like right after he was doing like every show for a while.
Yeah, but his waist was crazy then.
It was crazy good. He was crazy good.
Yeah.
But he still didn't have the back detail. Like if you turn him around against 2011 Phil, I don't think people understand how good that was. I really don't.
Phil from behind was excellent. He was amazing.
I don't think if you put Ronnie and Phil side by side at that year, that Phil loses that shot. I really don't. I think that it's unpopular, but I don't think he loses the shot.
Although I will say it might be the same situation. You put Ronnie next to Phil, and Ronnie's just too big.
He might be right.
You know.
But once he got like supersized in 2003, he lost something.
2003, I thought he was pretty amazing because he was huge, like 280, but he was just shredded.
Amazing.
After that,
sure.
After that, he started to come down a bit. I think he got softer. But 2003 was his year when he was like, he almost got beaten by Gunter in the Ironman or something, and he came back like, I'm going to show these guys what's what, and he just came back.
2002, Gunter beat him at the.
That's it. That's right. Yeah.
And he came back in 2003 like just supersized. But I still think that his back shots, if you look at his back shots, when like he was the back double bicep, especially, he had less detail in his upper back. His lower body was like stupid.
It's crazy.
And like actually didn't look possible. Like you looked at it and you're like, I don't know what that is. That's like a horse's ass with stripes.
Yeah. And his traps as well were unbelievable.
And I saw him in person around that time. I saw him actually like every year because he'd come to Bev's and I lived out there. But I saw him in person, like training, you know, in spandex and stuff, and his ass was like bigger than me. Legitimately, like around, it was just so big I couldn't even explain it to you. Like, just so much muscle, you know, all over his body. Absolutely the pinnacle of human size that I've seen in terms of like, you know, development.
I think so. Yeah,
sure.
I do. Yeah, I agree.
But again, like if you take him in 99 and 98, 99. Even 2000, aesthetically he was better, but he had more flaws because of the structural thing, like the four abs and his waist was a little more squatty, and it doesn't have a whole lot of definition in his legs. People don't realize that. I guess they don't really look, but he's never had a striation in his legs to be spoken of. So, you know, it's tough without putting them side by side, but I think that Phil might take some of those shots that you'd be surprised if they were standing there.
Okay.
But maybe not. Maybe Ronnie would just look like a fucking freak, and that'd be it.
Maybe. All right, that's a good place to round this out. So, Alex, thanks once again for your time, and we'll definitely do another one, whether it's on yours upcoming or whether it's on mine.
Yeah, I gotta get my shit together and
sounds great.
Put it on there.
Right, folks, we're going to call it there. So that's it from me. That's it for Alex, and take care. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Faz.
Cheers, man.